We've started recording. Thank you so much, y'all, for being here. I know today is Juneteenth, so let's celebrate that. Take a moment to recognize that and move forward. And also, let's welcome Mike. Mike, I've literally got very few of what your achievements here. I know you have spoken at multiple sessions. People know you yet. Saying you're a director at CapTech. You're a people leader group for people user group founder and also Slack chapter leader. So that's perfect. And I was counting your certifications and then I ran out of fingers. So I just stopped. So you know what? He has ton of certifications. So I didn't mention that here. But thank you so much for being here. And I'll transfer the control over to you. Take it away, Mike.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let me get my screen share going. I think you might have to stop so that I can.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Let's see.
Cool. We see your migrating permissions or how to session screen. But we lost your audio, Mike. You may need to unmute.
Oh, there we go. That was weird. I see why you would want those two things to happen at the same time. Awesome. Well, this is going to be migrating permissions. It's a how-to session. The point of this is to get everybody to understand what the challenge is, what the main tool set we have is, and then a basic model that scales pretty well. I just finished doing this at a Fortune 10 company, so it scales. We can go pretty big with this. I've also done this at pretty small companies, so it's a really flexible model. Again, my name is Mike Reynolds. I'm director of the Salesforce practice at CapTech. I'd love to be your partner. It's pretty much all I'm going to say about CapTech, because this is really not about that. It's really about like what we can do in our home orgs using our own hands, right? Forward-looking statement. I do talk to Salesforce. I might forward-looking statement. If I do, please don't make any purchasing decisions based on the shenanigans that comes out of my mouth. I don't even work for Salesforce. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a persona, why it matters. We're going to talk about how we're going to approach persona-based access. And then again, how do we exactly get this to happen? So what is a persona? And really what's important here is, why do I actually care what a persona is? The other thing I'll say is I'm looking at the same thing that you are, so I can't see you. Just unmute and interrupt me. We're a relatively small, intimate group. Y'all can just ask me questions. So the way that I always start learning something new is I just try to look up the words, right? And a persona is really just like, it's a social facade, but this doesn't necessarily tell us exactly what it is in the Salesforce space. In the Salesforce space, a persona is really simply put, what do you spend your time doing, right? What do you do all day, every day? A lot of people are going to say, oh, well, I'm an inside sales rep. That's not what you do. What do you do? What buttons do you click on? What types of records do you need to see? What do you do? Literally, from a functional perspective, what do you do, right? I don't care what your job title is. And in fact, persona has nothing to do with your job, right? The first company that I worked for was a massive call center. We had, in my building alone, there were over 1,000 call center agents. There were other satellite locations, and there were thousands of agents. They did over 1 million phone calls, one line of business just in the month of January after I had started. Massive, massive organization. Fun fact, across every single one of my inbound and outbound representatives, they all did the same thing, right? They had hundreds of job titles. Same thing, right? They were all working on accounts and contacts. They were all working on the same opportunities. They all could see the same cases. Now, there was a small customer service team. There were only 200 of those customer service center agents. Those 200 people had 50 different things that they did, right? So across this group of 1,000, 2,000 users, they were all the same. They did the same thing. 200 service users, totally different thing, right? So it's not a job, right? So this gets us to the question of, okay, it's not a job. It's what you spend your day doing. Why do I care, right? Like, why are you going on and on about this? Well, who doesn't love a good Venn diagram, right? So we care about personas because we can use personas to map out the overlap between different groups of users. And if I understand where the overlap is, I can design an access model that is sustainable and easier to maintain than what most of us have, right? Most of us have permission sets that don't really make sense, right? And they come from problems that we all experience on a regular basis. My favorite is the profile problem. You can only have one profile. And so much of the time, I have a user with profile A, and then I have another user who's going to go out on a leave of absence, but they have profile B. And then somebody comes up to me and says, Mike, user A needs to maintain their current level of access, but I also need them to have everything user B has. Okay. So now what do? I create a permission set, and I take all of the permissions from that second profile and I dump them into that permission set, and I assign it to that user. And now I have a user that's probably over provisioned, right? Because I can't have that permission set magically go away. And the reminder in my calendar for 3 months from now, missed it. You know, I happen to be out of town that day. And so now they're over technical debt. When I make changes to that profile, did I also make changes to that permission set? Probably not, right? Nobody even wrote down that that thing happens. And then not only did I have that technical debt, but I really didn't give them the right access. There's stuff that you give people with the profile that you can't give with a permission set, right? I didn't change their defaults. So we have all these natural problems that our current tools, that being the profile, the permission set, and the permission set group, they sort of leave us in a problem, right? Because we build everything off of the profile. We should be building things off a persona instead, right? So how do I use this persona to then do something positive? Well, we're going to go back to this Venn diagram. We're going to think about it a little bit more. Let's take a basic example of a sales persona and a service persona, right? I've written some common elements on the screen, the stuff that would be in the center of that Venn diagram, right? They could probably both read accounts, contacts, and cases. Pretty simple, right? Nobody's going to really argue with me on that. But what is there about a service persona that would not apply to the sales persona? Somebody take a guess. If not, it's just going to be me like sitting here talking to myself, which will be awkward.
I'd say maybe cases.
What about them? What about cases?
Well, I think that a service person probably has to work on a case where a salesperson might just have like read only or something to see some kind of view into it.
Yeah, certainly maybe the salesperson could create them, but they would definitely have different levels of access to what fields maybe. They probably can't control the priority. They probably can't close the case, right? There's other elements that certainly the service persona is going to have more access than that sales persona, right? And I could flip it on the same side, right? On the sales persona side, there's probably a lot around the opportunity that the service persona does not have, right? I would not expect my service persona, some service personas are going to cross-sell, right? But I probably expect different access to the opportunity on the service versus sales side, right? Maybe it's on leads, things like that. They're going to be clearly different. So we can understand that we can make decisions about what type of access to give them because of their persona. Fantastic part about this is it gets worse. Because if I start adding more personas, and realistically in your organization, you're going to have more than 3, right? Realistically, the more personas I add, the more complicated this is going to get. And so many of you will have heard of MVP office hours. There is a friend of mine who's on MVP office hours. His name is Squire. Squire Kirshner and I had a bit of a let's meet at the flagpole after school moment. And we argued. You can actually listen to it. We recorded it and turned it into an episode on our podcast called The Jam. I can give everybody a link to that later. But Squire and I had a pretty long debate about not necessarily exactly what I'm going to say to you, but the idea that somebody can have something and say, this is going to work for everybody. And so I've added this slide into my presentation. What I'm about to describe to you, this persona-based permissions model, is a general approach that if you take it and bring it directly into your Salesforce org, you might need to tweak it a little bit. Each one of us has a different org. The model works. You may need to adjust it. So I might say we have one company-based permission set that we use in all of our personas. You might have more than one. That's fine. Just think about the idea and then adapt the idea to work into your org. If you have specific questions, happy to answer them. I can make recommendations. But you're going to have to get your hands pretty dirty and dig into what permissions you need. And I can tell you, most of the time, we should be trying to force people into using fewer different personas than more personas. But if you need more, create another one. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. So this is an important one. I'll leave it up here for another second.
I guess, sorry.
Yeah,
I guess, right. That's really good for me. Trying to understand, like, to go through like a checklist of when I have to add in a persona, like maybe have like a checklist for myself, like these 3 things happen, therefore I have to do it, instead of just saying, oh, I can add one more. For me, having more like a little like bumper around and say, okay, if this happens, I have to like address, maybe that might be the answer. So that, are there anything like that would come up that you can think, we can talk about later, like anything that like would flag it?
So yeah, come back to me with this question in 4 slides, and it'll be easier for me to understand, like, okay, cool. Because of what you've done to me, I am going to need to adapt it in this way, right? Because there are some pretty clear indications. We'll get into that. So the way that we solve this problem is pretty simple. We're going to essentially abandon the profile, right? We still need it, but we're going to slim it down. Everything that we can remove from the profile, we will. And then we're going to build 3 different types of permission sets, and we're going to group those with a permission set group, and each persona will get 1 permission set group. And so stop thinking about profiles and start thinking about your permission set group that aligns with your persona. Okay, so that's the model. I just told you the whole thing, right? So here's the specifics. We're going to start out with this first permission set, and I call it the base permission set. Think of the base permission set as the universal permission set. I put this one in every profile, or excuse me, in every persona permission set group. The thing with the base permission set, it's incredibly boring, right? Remember I had that Venn diagram where I added just 3, and that area in the middle started getting pretty small. If you do this at your company and you have, let's say, 12 personas, which if you're a decent sized company, you're going to have that many personas, right? If you've got 12, see the kind of things I've listed here, right? I'm a Lightning Experience user. Great. So is everybody. That's trivial, right? I don't want to assign that all over the place. I just want to assign it once. And that's what this base really is, right? It's going to be the most boring, unexciting permissions ever. You'll note nothing in here about objects, nothing about fields, no apps, no tabs. This is really like what you get in system permissions, right? So I let everybody in the company can view reports. Okay, cool. We'll put it in here, right? And that way we don't have to worry about it in other layers of the model. Does this part make sense so far? Yes, no, maybe so?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next one is going to be the idea of a read permission set. This is really a UI permission set. I want you to think about it that way. This is going to be for apps. It's going to be for tabs. If you can do tabs if you specify a license type. So you could do apps, tabs. You can do objects, read only, right? I don't care about any of the other crud here, just read. And you can do fields, again, read only. If you have really cool developers that have created custom permissions that allow you to read an LWC, great, I'll include those here. If they are custom permissions that allow something to not have a red error message, great, I'll allow them here, but only reading, right? And that's really, really critical. This is no sensitive data, right? A social security number would not fall into my read permission set. So no PII, PCI, PHI, none of that. If I have an abbreviation for it, it doesn't belong here. But this is going to allow a user with this permission set in their persona permission set group to navigate, right? Now, another question that comes up frequently is, would I need to have one of these permission sets per object? No. We're thinking bigger picture. It's everything that that persona probably needs. And I'm going to reuse this a lot, right? So you'll see in an example I have, my marketing persona and my sales persona, their read permission set can actually be the same because their base level of access to Salesforce is the same. I'm so sorry, my marketers. I love you dearly. But when I ask you what you do, it looks a lot like sales. A lot like sales. You just don't do as much as sales. You do more before. That's fine, right? So you're going to see differences, though, when you get over into like service, right? The service read permission set is dramatically different from the sales read permission set, right? They have different apps. They're doing different things, right? The last one is the most easy to understand. It's the persona permission set. It's everything else, right? You do need the ability to edit things, to delete some stuff. You've got to be able to, access Apex classes and controllers so that your pages function correctly. That's all totally fine. It belongs up here. And if you think about this as a risk meter, the farther to the right we get, the more risk I have. The farther to the left I get over on the base permission set side, that it is no risk. Right? If there's any risk, I'm not putting it in there. Right? Questions so far, these three types of permission sets.
Yeah, I've got one, Mike. So
Yes.
The way I understand, it's not really a question, it's mostly like confirming. So the base permission set would be one per persona, or would that be one per org?
Most of the time, you're going to get away with one base permission set for your entire org.
Okay.
The persona permission set will be one permission set per persona.
Gotcha.
Read, you'll probably reuse.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
So another way to put it, right? Base permission set, extreme reusability.
Mm-hmm.
Read permission set, moderate reusability. Persona permission set, very slim reusability.
Gotcha. So every time I create a new user, I'll go ahead and add the base permission set without even thinking or blinking an eye. And then I think about read permission set, probably 99% yes. And then after that gets more involved conversation on which persona. Gotcha. Thank you.
Exactly. So how do I make it happen in my org? Well, let's go back to this original slide, right? We had these three. So if we flip these and we start to think about them in a slightly different way, what I'm going to do is let's pretend each one of these buckets or each one of these little blobs that I have on the screen is a permission set group, right? So I've created one permission set group for each persona that I care about. And I'm going to use an empty profile. Now, we do want to think about the profile in kind of a pragmatic way. You have to have one. And the profile does give you a lot of things. The easiest file is that it's going to give you your defaults. What is your default record type, your default app? There's some IP stuff, some login information in there. There's some things that we can only do with a profile. Those things are going to mean that the profile is really with us forever. I don't see the profile going away, right? There's some fundamental problems Salesforce cannot solve. And so the profile is going to be here forever. What we're going to see is that you can't add any other permissions into the profile. So when I say an empty profile, I mean a profile with lots of stuff in it, but no permissions, right? So you'll set those profiles up with whatever you need them to be. And honestly, truth be told, that means you're probably not going to have just one profile because you're going to have different defaults. And so maybe you do have lots of profiles, but they're going to not have any permissions in them, and they're going to be very specific. They'll probably also align with your personas.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think do you name them, your profile, your persona, name for the profiles, or do you have some other naming convention?
Naming convention, super critical, super critical. I try to keep it generic unless it is because of the defaults it's using, it is only going to be functional for one persona.
Got it.
Right. And there are examples of that, but generally speaking, you don't need one per persona.
Perfect.
Right. Like marketing and sales, y'all look alike. you know, like they're probably going to use the same one. So it's kind of up to you and your org, right?
I have a question here. I think it was in here.
Sure.
What about sysadmin? Right. So like, I think most of my permissions are really on my profile, but I'm assuming that's going to have to move too, right? Like that's.
It will.
Okay.
It will. You're absolutely right. So, I hate saying this. Give me a couple slides. It'll be easier to explain.
Okay, no, that's fine.
That's fine. You're gonna have a persona permission set for your sysadmin that has a lot in it, and they're gonna have every read that you create. And if you have more than one base, they'll have all those bases.
Okay.
So it is the same model. It's just their persona permission set is really big. It has a lot in it. So let's dive in. If we're thinking about the base, right? In this example, if I only have these 3 personas, one company base is going to take care of me, right? I'm not going to run into any issues. So I'll create that company base and I will add it into each of these permission set groups. At the read level or that UI level, I've said like sales and marketing, they're very, very similar. Their basic level of access in terms of what apps do they care about and all of that. It's similar enough that I can have them both use the sales read permission set group. Service, though, is different. It's related to field service that at a basic level are readable here that I don't expose over here, right? So service is going to get its own read permission set. The next step of this is that I'm going to give them all a persona permission set group because marketing does have unique access, right? As does sales, as does service. So they each get their own persona permission set group added in. And then I'm going to formally name these permission set groups after their personas. Like Tracy, I think it was Tracy who said that, like, what is the naming convention? Well, the naming convention is really important. Pick a naming convention that resonates with your environment and that follows whatever norms you have, right? But whatever it is, use it and stick to it and deactivate any user that doesn't follow it. Be very mean. That's my advice. So this is it, right? So again, if I was thinking about, I think it was Heidi's question, how do I set up sysadmin? Well, sysadmin gets a persona permission set group. They would get they'd get their own persona level permission set, and then they'd get all the reads and all the company bases. Interestingly enough, I would not recommend in that permission set group adding every other persona permission set. And the reason for that, a lot of people use view all data and modify all data, read every field. They're very blind to what the data actually is. And in complex environments, your system administrators in production don't need read on every field. They really don't. And in fact, it's risky to expose all of the data to that user. And so in fact, I don't recommend that. I recommend that they have a healthy amount of access, but they probably don't need all of it. You could, in that fact, have an extra permission set group that is a true, like for our API users that are like, doing data backup and data restoration, that type of stuff, where they truly do see all the data, even the encrypted stuff. That could be a separate persona permission set. And if I actually need to give that level of access to a user, I can do it with the persona permission set group that gives them that, and then I can have it expire, right? That's one of the features of permission set groups. It's so great. When you assign the permission set group, you can have it expire, right?
Question,
So I'm kind of,
sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, so question, so would you have like one super like admin? Because I feel like, right, like one person needs to have, or no, not one person, because I guess you always go in there and change it if you need that, you can give that extra.
Yeah, as long as you can manage users.
Okay.
You can go in and change your own access, right?
Right. Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so what if this model's been set up, you've set up your org, everything's beautiful, everything is easy, and then another persona shows up. It's going to be the legal persona, right? because it's always legal. They're the ones who cause the most problems, in my experience. We can deal with this, and it's actually not that bad. I've got these persona permission set groups set up, and I know that legal, when I ask them, okay, well, what do you do? Because that's how I'm going to start. I'm going to say, what do you do? And they're going to say, well, we need to see everything. And I go, okay, great. What do you do? Like, oh, we don't really do anything. We just need to be able to see everything, you know, because we're attorneys. Right? Okay, fine. Then guess what? In their permission set group, I'm just going to put the read permission sets. The beauty in this is that when, let's say, the service persona, right? Service persona users come up to me. I get this new user story. As a service persona user, I need the ability to classify a case's internal importance. I know that I'm done when people in the service persona can see and edit this, but everybody with the service persona or the service read should be able to see it, right? I'm probably not going to get that last bit in the user story. I'm just going to get the service persona needs to be able to edit. Well, what I'm going to do when I actually implement that is that service read permission set is going to be able to read that new field. And the service persona permission set is going to be able to edit the field. And because of that, the legal persona team their access stayed.
Hey, Mike, you broke up on a lot. You broke up on the most important part of that last thing. Yeah. So just you said that. It's like that. It was like all the.
Well, what I said was really cool.
Right there. I know. Yeah. So just can you repeat that about why you're giving the service persona or whatever you were going to say.
Yeah. So what? Okay. So when I get that new field, service read is going to be able to read the new field, and service persona is going to be able to edit the new field. By doing it in this way, the legal team is automatically maintained. Right? They're not going to come to me in 5 months when they realize they've been missing this data because they were able to see it as soon as I updated it for the service persona. I never went in and edited anything about them. I never touched those users. I probably didn't even get a good user story that told me I needed to maintain the legal persona. But the model I used was maintaining itself. And that's what makes this so powerful. When I scale this up and I use it for my really big customers, the thing that I see the most of is that we spend a ton of time just sorting out basic access issues, right? If you've ever been at an organization that has had an audit because you're trying to do SOX or SOC 2, SOC 1, SOC 2, those audits can be a genuine nightmare. This model simplifies that so much. Your life is going to be so much easier because you have this model in place, right? Because people are going to go, oh, well, who can see this? Well, everybody with this read, you know, the sales read can see it. Well, who are those users? Everybody with these personas. You want a list? Here you go. That's it. It's done.
Beautiful.
Right? So it is an incredibly simple way to go about things. And the simplest way that works is the best way. And that's what I think this model is. I'm going to go ahead and pop this next slide up. If you want a copy of this deck, get your phone out, fill out this form. I will send you a copy of the deck and I will try to connect with you on LinkedIn. That's why I asked for your company name. I will not turn this over to my marketing department, much to their chagrin, but I'll just send you a copy of the deck.
The form is closed.
The form is closed. Oh no. Womp womp. This is why I can't have nice things.
It's all that multitasking.
It is all that multitasking. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pop this.
We don't have write permissions.
Oh no, I didn't set up the model right at all. I tell you what. See, can't trust an architect to do anything right. I gotta tell you.
Stay out of production, Mike.
Yeah, we need our assistants. That's for sure. Our helpers. I mean, our assistants are our support friends.
Oof. It's always when I try to get into production that things go wrong, you know, like.
Mm-hmm.
Joy knows.
What if your support in production?
Oh, I was being silly.
All right, does that work? Can we see that?
Let's see.
It looks weird on my screen, but if you can see it,
it works.
It works.
All right. All right. Okay. So yeah, go ahead and give that a scan. I will send you a copy of the deck, connect on LinkedIn, and then I'm happy to answer your questions, even if it's about your actual implementation, how you do this. I actually at Texas Dreamin' had somebody come up to me and they had seen this presentation at TDX and their company is implementing it, and that guy picked my brain for like 45 minutes about like some troubles that they're having, and I think we got them squared away, which is really great. So yeah, please feel free to reach out, ask any questions, and then I can answer questions now for another 13 minutes, and then I have to go chase my children. I can hear them pounding at the door. It's like
yeah. You hear them like for sure. Like that's my dog too. My dog was barking. Same thing. No, I was kidding. Not same thing.
Oh, I heard somebody's dog.
That was my dog. That was Freddie. Quick question for that. So I'm this is the perfect time for me because I'm about to do an implementation with my client, right? That's why I've always thought about this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited this happened. Like we're starting tomorrow, honestly. So my idea is like, yeah, I know. I was like, oh my God, what timing? So my idea is like, I have for the persona, like I'm grabbing personas and I have a spreadsheet where I'm Xing things out. And that's kind of how I'm tracking to see is that kind of how you kind of track when you find something, you just kind of X it. You just have a big map of everything and then you kind of group everything together. That's kind of what my thoughts are.
Yeah. So what I tend to do is it?
Oh no, it's established. It's completely a mess. I mean, it's completely like they have like a 15 million different like profiles, a million different. We're just trying to like clean it all.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So what I usually start with in an established org is the apps. Right.
Okay.
So what app do you work in? I find that the overwhelming majority of users they only use one app. Like and I think apps are so underutilized. Like y'all, apps are the most powerful thing in the world. Like apps and app activation, like you don't know. It's so amazing. So if they're using one app, okay, great. Well, that tells you the app, that tells you the tabs, and then you start to go, okay, well, what personas are using this app? And then you start to realize that, okay, well, I have like 6 personas that all use the same app. Are they really all that different? Right? Like I start to go, are you really different, or are you sales and marketing? Like y'all are really close, right? I can give you one unified read, right? And so I think about that UI first. The stuff that's going to be the easiest is what goes into the bottom. I can tell you, like Tracy, I'll share with you like what I generally throw in the read level, or excuse me, the base permission set. There's not a lot that I put in there, and then I always show up with a recommendation. But if you just open system settings and you go, is this risky? All the way down that list, you'll go, okay, well, this is my base. You could just build it. It's really boring stuff, right? I'm a Flow user. I'm a Lightning user, right? I can use consoles. I can run reports. I can view public list views. Of course, you can view public list views, right?
Right.
Like, give me a break. Now, is there an org? Like, is there an org out there that's like, well, we can't let people view public list views? Fine, cool, great. Then you change it. But generally speaking, right, all your users are probably going to be able to do this. I will put this one word of caution out there. Permission set groups have the ability to mute permissions. General PSA. A muted permission is scoped to the permission set group. What does that mean?
So, someone can accidentally get muted when you don't want to mute it, right? Like
no, the other.
Oh, the other way around. I got back.
Right?
Oh, so someone can get it. Oh, I got you.
So let's say in here, right?
Okay.
Let's say in here, I add a permission set that is a muting permission set, right? And that mute suppresses something in service read, right? Well, if I then assign a user service read permission set, which an admin would do, an admin would give someone a permission set attempting to troubleshoot an issue. Since that permission set has been assigned specifically outside of the permission set group, these are all additive.
Whoa. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So muting is risky depending on your org's risk tolerance, I would say as a general practice, it may be best to literally never mute a permission ever, right? And so if you approach it from the everybody has no access, and then I slowly build your access, which is what this does. I slowly give you the space. I give you the read or reads that you need, and then I go up from there. This is going to result in about 1.2x permission sets as you have personas, which is really not bad. The first org I implemented this in, there were 1,100 permission sets.
Whoa.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Like they had to pay for more.
Whoa.
Right?
Wow. That's crazy.
So, you know, it like, and when we were done, I actually didn't get to see it finish, but like the amount of reduction was wild. We reduced the number of permission sets dramatically. It's really crazy. It'd be so much easier to manage. So much easier to manage. I was using nearly an entire full-time employee to manage access issues.
Wow.
Like day-to-day problems with who can see what.
Wow.
And this just solves that. And then that person could do real work, right? Not that that's not real work, but they could do something much more productive over time.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
And one more caution. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, what other questions do we have?
Oh, no, one more caution on that muting permission set is if you have a muting permission set and your profile gives access to the same permission, the muting permission set wins. So even if you go to the base profile saying, oh yeah, I'm going to grant it to profile, let's see what happens. Nope. You got to find which muting permission set are, and you can one muting permission set per permission set group. Luckily, you can't have more than one in one permission set group, which is good, but still it's finding head in the haystack, like a needle in the haystack.
Yeah. Just like on one of the, it sounds like one of the exams, right? It sounds like an exam question to me.
It happened with me. So I ran into a situation where I got a call from a VP saying, hey, my users are not going to do blah. And I was scratching my head for like almost 4 hours. My eyes are almost red because I wasn't blinking, just scratching through the screen. And then it hit me, wait a minute, let me check the permission set groups. So they had multiple permission set groups, and one of them had that pesky muting permission set. So took that off, things started working. But it was confusing to admins saying, what is happening? And once things start escalating, they escalate all the way up. Then there is no stopping that roller coaster.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about that is that the one muting permission set in any permission set groups that have been assigned will override the profile. But permission sets and permission set groups are additive in nature. And so if the access is granted, if it's muted over here, but it's granted here, you do get it. So the muting will supersede down to the profile, but not across, if you think about it that way. It's a very interesting way that whole thing works. And it's interesting. I don't know who said it about the exams. I don't know that this type of permissions question has popped up on an exam yet. Okay. I have one of the things that I do is write Salesforce exams.
Yeah, that's why I said that comment.
Yeah, I think I've written like 12, but who's counting? And I think that it'll be quite a while before we actually see that type of content on the exam. That if it would show up on an architect level exam.
That's right. Would it be sharing visibility, or is that where, if it would be, is that what this goes through? I'm kind of
sharing visibility really is all about the data side. I don't think we get into I don't think we get into much on the other side of the coin, like So like if we think about I love the simplest way to explain anything, and so this is one of my favorite things. If you think about Salesforce as being an Excel spreadsheet, because it is, sorry, Papa Mark. If you think about it being an Excel spreadsheet, we essentially regulate two separate things. We regulate the access to fields and objects, which is, can you read this tab in the Excel spreadsheet, right? And then there's another tab called contact. Can you read that tab? That's what we've been talking about on this. That's permissions. It's which columns on the table can you read? Object access is just going to actually guarantee you one field, which is ID. Data or any access to rows, well, that's all sharing. And that's totally separate from everything we've talked about tonight. And specifically, It has its own exam.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
Which really is covering all of the complexity that comes from your OWD through your hierarchy to your sharing rules to your manual shares or Apex shares plus your restriction rules. And then community-based stuff that comes through with like sharing sets and sharing-based community sharing. Sharing-based community sharing, that's what I just said. I'm going to own it. That's what it's called. I'm fancy.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. What else? I have 3 minutes if anyone has any other questions. Thank you, Joy, for putting the link to our podcast. Joy is my co-host on the Jam Pod.
Joy is the J in the jam.
Joy is the J in the jam. Joy is the J in the jam.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And then if you are doing this in your home org and you want it to be less painful, I did create a program that will automagically do it all. We charge for that.
Of course.
We charge for that.
Of course.
Yeah.
You gotta have some kind, right? You can't give it all away for. That's the idea. You can't give it all away for free. Cool.
I can't give it all away for. I can tell you how to do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Totally, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, even still.
Thank you so much.
Out,
I really, yeah. Go on.
I was gonna say,
Mike.
yeah, the hard part is figuring it out, right? Once you've figured out your personas, the rest of it's just work. It's just chopping wood at that point. And that's all the computer program does. Figuring it out is the time that you have to actually invest in your org, invest in your customers. That's a lot of work. And there's no easy button for that.
Well, the cool thing is for me, that's exactly what we're doing. Why I'm doing it now is because I'm starting to talk to each team. So I'm like, if I'm talking to each team about stuff, their pain points, why not do this now? And so I kind of timed it perfectly. So it's, again, I could have had better timing for this. Thank you.
Awesome.
Chester.
This is Chester.
Yeah.
Sure.
He brought me his toy. He wants me to play fetch with him, but I can't.
I want to come play in your room.
He's not cute. When he climbs up my body, he's not cute.
I don't care. You get all the toys and all the things and a cat. I want to come play in the room.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for inviting me, May. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. LinkedIn is the best. I will always answer.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great day,
you.
everyone.
Mike. This was fantastic.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye all.